Three brothers, a world reborn from the waters, and a destiny that would forever mark the course of humanity. Shem, Ham, and Japheth not only inherited the earth but also bore the weight of a divine promise, an eternal covenant with God, and the enormous responsibility of rebuilding a broken world. But their mission was not only to repopulate the earth, it also led them to face one another, to test their beliefs, and to live under the shadow of a tower that dared to challenge the heavens themselves. What mysteries lie hidden in their lineages? What was the true legacy left by Noah's sons? If you want to know how ambition, faith, and the struggle for power shaped the first chapters of our history, this is a tale you cannot miss. Subscribe for more impactful stories and share this one so others can discover this fascinating episode of humanity. Let's begin. The sun slowly rose over a world that had changed forever. Everything around seemed foreign, unrecognizable, as if creation itself had been stripped of its essence and clothed in a new, mysterious and desolate garment. The air was thick with humidity and the heavy scent of wet earth, life and death intertwined. Noah stood tall, leaning on a staff he had carved during the long days aboard the ark. His gaze, deep and solemn, wandered over the vast, transformed landscape. Beside him, his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth stood in silence, trying to absorb the magnitude of what their eyes were witnessing. The flood had ceased, but the scars of its fury still lingered. Twisted trees stood like silent witnesses to the devastation, while wide fields lay submerged, reflecting the sky in murky waters. Noah closed his eyes for a moment, remembering God's words, the command he had been entrusted with, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth." Yet, in the face of such desolation, the task seemed overwhelming. It was Shem, the eldest, who broke the silence. His voice, firm yet serene, betrayed the character of a thoughtful and devout man. "Father, where do we begin? This world seems to have died." Shem had always been the most devout, the one who saw in every trial an opportunity to honor God. His gaze, filled with determination, sought answers in his father's face. Ham, however, let out a sigh of impatience. Strong in build, with dark eyes that flashed with unease, he scanned the horizon with a look of disdain. "Why fill this earth if everything has been destroyed? What do we have left?" His words were laden with frustration. His brothers exchanged tense glances. Ham had always been the most impulsive, the one who questioned orders and defied his father's authority. Japheth, the youngest, didn't respond immediately. His eyes wandered across the desolate landscape, a mixture of curiosity and melancholy in them. Finally, he murmured softly, almost as though speaking to himself, "Maybe this isn't just a loss. Perhaps it's a new opportunity." Japheth possessed an observant, analytical spirit. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his words left an impact. The following days passed in quiet effort. They dismantled the ark, repurposing its wood to build shelter. Though they worked together, tensions were palpable. Ham avoided making eye contact with Shem, and Japheth tried, with little success, to mediate between them. Noah, watching in silence, felt the weight of a concern that gnawed at him. Something in the hearts of his sons troubled him. An invisible crack the flood had not erased. One night, while the stars shone brightly in the vast sky, Shem approached his father, his unease impossible to quell. "Father, do you think we will be able to fulfill God's command?" he asked humbly. Noah, his gaze lost in the dance of the flames, fell into a long silence before answering. "God has promised not to destroy the earth as he did before, but my son, we are not immune to our own actions. The real challenge will not be filling the earth, but doing so with justice." From the shadows, Ham, who had been listening, stepped forward with a furrowed brow. "Justice? Was it just that everything perished? That even the innocent were swept away by the waters? What kind of justice is that? His words echoed in the night like a bitter refrain. Shem clenched his jaw, his expression hardening. "Be careful how you speak of God, brother," he warned firmly. Japheth, sitting by the fire, looked up with a tired gesture. "This isn't the time for arguing. We all have questions, but we must look forward." That night, when the camp fell into silence, Ham walked away and climbed a hill. From there, he gazed at the vastness of the desolate landscape, his heart wavering between rebellion and awe. There was something within him, a persistent feeling since the flood had ended, an echo that the waters had not been able to completely erase. Shem, restless, could not sleep. He knew something had changed in his brother, and in the stillness of the night, he raised a prayer asking for wisdom to understand him. Japheth, though naturally conciliatory, could not ignore the growing distance between them. The dawn brought more than just light. After days of gray skies, the sun appeared with strength, illuminating the reborn mountains and valleys. The air had a freshness that heralded a new beginning. Noah, with his face marked by age and wisdom, left the shelter they had built, and when he looked up, he witnessed a sight that took his breath away. A majestic rainbow unfolded across the horizon, its vibrant colors stretching like a bridge between the sky and the earth. He fell to his knees, tears in his eyes, as he listened to the voice of the Creator within him. "This is the covenant I establish with you and every living creature. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy the earth. This rainbow in the clouds will be the sign of my eternal covenant." He gathered his family by the fire and shared the revelation with them. Shem, with his usual reverence, bowed his head. "It is a sign of hope, a reminder of God's mercy. We must walk in obedience to avoid repeating the mistakes of the past," he said with conviction. Ham, however, looked at the rainbow with an unreadable expression. "It's beautiful, but what guarantees do we have that it won't happen again? Why should we live in fear of a punishment that may never come? Perhaps it's time to depend less on divine will and more on ourselves." His words hung in the air, wrapping the camp in a tense silence. Japheth, with his thoughtful gaze, intervened. "The rainbow is not just a covenant, but a symbol of diversity. Each color has its place, but together they form something greater. Maybe we should learn from it, build a world where our differences strengthen us, rather than divide us." That conversation was the prelude to the first family disputes on how to rebuild the world. Shem argued that the priority should be establishing pure worship of God, erecting altars, and dedicating every action to glorifying His name. Everything we do must be for Him. The world was destroyed because men turned away from God. We cannot repeat their mistake. Ham, with his arms crossed and a defiant look, retorted. Corruption didn't just come from sin, but from the oppression of those who impose their faith on others. If we're going to rebuild this world, it must be free, a place where each person chooses how to live. We don't need altars to prove our worth. Japheth tried to mediate as always, but this time his tone was more reflective than conciliatory. "Both of you are partially right. We need a higher purpose to guide us, but we also need to learn to live with freedom and explore this new world. There's so much to discover, so many questions to answer. Maybe we shouldn't rush to decide which path to take without first understanding the world around us better." The tensions grew with each passing day. Shem spent long hours building a stone altar on a nearby hill, while Ham, ignoring him, worked on a system of canals to irrigate the crops he had begun planting. Japheth, for his part, spent the days exploring the surrounding lands, mapping rivers and valleys, and collecting samples of plants and minerals that intrigued him. Noah silently observed the differences between his sons, but his concern grew. He knew each represented a fundamental aspect of humanity's future: Shem's devotion, Ham's autonomy, and Japheth's curiosity. But he also understood that these differences, if not handled wisely, could turn into irreparable cracks. One night, when the starry sky seemed as vast as the destiny awaiting them, Noah gathered his sons. The rainbow is a covenant from God with all of us, not just one of us. Each of us has a role to play in this new beginning, but we must never forget that we are a family. If we allow our differences to separate us, we will be no different from those who perished in the waters. Shem lowered his gaze, his hands still stained with the earth from working on his altar. Ham, though he didn't respond, pressed his lips together, his expression revealing a mix of pride and resentment. Japheth looked at his father with eyes full of doubt, but also respect. Noah continued, "The true challenge is not to fill the earth with people, but with a spirit of unity and purpose. Each of you has something to offer, but if you do not learn to listen to one another, this covenant will be in vain." Despite Noah's words, the tensions did not completely fade. Shem continued to look at Ham with distrust, seeing in him a rebellion he considered dangerous. Ham, on his part, began to feel that he had no true place in the family, as if his ideas and desires were constantly judged. Japheth, though less vocal, felt trapped in a precarious balance, divided between his brother's visions. However, the rainbow continued to appear in the sky after every rain, a silent reminder that, although their paths seemed to diverge, they were bound by something greater than themselves. Each interpreted its meaning in his own way. Shem saw it as a call to devotion, Ham as a promise of independence, and Japheth as a symbol of discovery. What none of them knew was that these paths, though different, would intertwine in ways that would shape the destiny of all humanity. The sun slowly set, covering the hills with a golden glow as work on Noah's newly planted vineyard progressed. After months of joint effort, the vines had begun to sprout, promising a fruit that symbolized both a new beginning and the potential of the renewed earth. For Noah, the vineyard was not just a crop but an act of faith, a sign that the world could once again flourish under God's favor. On the day the first harvest was gathered, the family gathered around Noah as he pressed the grapes with trembling hands, producing the first wine since the flood. His sons watched in silence. To Shem, this act carried a deeply spiritual meaning. The wine was a symbol of renewal and communion with God. To Ham, it represented humanity's ability to produce something tangible, a fruit that demonstrated their autonomy. Japheth, with his natural curiosity, saw in it an opportunity to experience something new, to understand how the earth could continue to provide more than they imagined. The wine, however, would also bring unforeseen shadows. One night, after a long day of work, Noah drank from the wine he had made. At first, the effects seemed to bring him well-earned relief. His laughter echoed in the night air, and his words were warm, filled with memories and reflections. But as the night wore on, the wine began to overpower him. Noah, the man who had walked with God, fell into a state of drunkenness, something none of his sons had ever witnessed before. Finally, unable to stand, Noah retreated to his tent. His mind, clouded by the wine, did not allow him to realize that, as he lay down, he was left exposed in his nakedness. That night it was Ham who found him. Entering the tent and seeing his father in that state, his expression became ambiguous, wavering between mockery and contempt. Instead of covering him, he hurried out and called his brothers. "Shem, Japheth, come see the righteous man who saved the world," he said with a mocking tone. "Look how he lies there, vulnerable like any other mortal." Shem and Japheth exchanged looks of disbelief. Their faces reflected both indignation and sorrow. They could not understand their brother's attitude. Without speaking a word, they took a cloak, walked backward into the tent, and covered their father with respect, avoiding looking at him directly. To them, Noah's nakedness was not a matter of ridicule, but a reminder that even the most righteous could be fragile. When Noah awoke and learned what had happened, his face darkened. He felt not only shame for his own weakness, but also a deep wound from Ham's irreverence. This was not merely an act of disrespect, it revealed a heart lacking in honor and fear of God. With a grave and trembling voice, Noah spoke words that would resonate for generations. "Cursed be Canaan. He shall be a servant of servants to his brothers. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." The weight of that curse fell upon all of Ham's descendants. Though the words were directed at his son Canaan, the echo of that sentence marked the fate of his lineage. Ham felt that his punishment was disproportionate and injustice dictated by the wrath of a humiliated father. "Are we not all human, even Noah?" he murmured to himself. "Why does his mistake go without judgment, but mine does not?" That thought turned into resentment. Over time, Ham distanced himself from his family, leading his descendants to distant lands. There he founded cities that flourished under his leadership, yet the shadow of the curse followed him wherever he went. Every achievement was tainted by a sense of rejection, as if he were doomed to be a stranger among his own people. Shem and Japheth, aware of the growing division, debated how to handle the situation. Ham must understand that his lack of respect was not just against our father, but against the authority that God has given him. Shem insisted with unwavering devotion. Without discipline, man strays from God and falls into chaos. Japheth, always thoughtful, sighed. "He already feels cast aside, Shem. If we continue rejecting him, his heart will harden even more. Perhaps reconciliation is the way. Perhaps we must remind him that he is still our brother." But their conversations never reached a conclusion. The dilemma was profound. How to balance justice with mercy. How to uphold truth without losing the chance to mend broken bonds. Meanwhile, Noah's vineyard continued to grow, its vines strengthening with each passing season. But what had once been a symbol of rebirth began to take on different meanings. To Shem, it was a reminder that God's blessing must be honored with obedience. To Ham, it reflected the fragility of human nature and the hypocrisy of his family. To Japheth, the vineyard was a lesson. Something with the potential for good could, if not handled wisely, become a source of division. The rains came and went, and with them, the rainbow continued to paint the sky. But within Noah's family, the promise of unity that the symbol represented seemed to fade little by little. The vineyard flourished, but the bonds between the brothers withered slowly, as if the land itself mirrored the cracks in their hearts. Though Noah lived long enough to see his sons begin to populate the earth, his heart never found complete peace. He knew that the true challenge was not only to rebuild the physical world, but to heal the divisions that had begun to take root in the hearts of men. The vineyard, with its beauty and duality, remained a silent reminder. Even the greatest gifts can become trials if not used with wisdom. And then came the day of separation. A solemn air filled the valley where the family had remained together since the flood. Under the vast sky, Noah gathered his sons one last time. Before him, each carried not only the tools for life, but also the scars of unresolved conflicts. With a voice choked with emotion, Noah blessed them and sent them forth to fill the earth, fulfilling God's command. Go and multiply. May the Most High guide your paths, and may His justice shine through your actions. Remember this: though destiny may lead you down different paths, you are still brothers. and in that unity rests the hope of humanity. His words echoed in the silence, but each brother received them differently. Shem took the road east. His heart longed for the presence of God, and his faith was a beacon that illuminated his every step. As he journeyed, mighty rivers and fertile plains unfolded before him. He built altars at every significant place, offering sacrifices in reverence to the Creator. It was at one of these altars that he received a vision that left him breathless, a vast lineage, destined to carry the promises of God. Yet not all in the vision was light. Unsettling shadows loomed over the future, foretelling trials and sacrifices. In the east, Shem encountered tribes that worshiped gods carved in stone and wood. A dilemma arose before him: how to coexist with these cultures without compromising his faith. Some tribes welcomed him, intrigued by his wisdom and serenity. Others rejected him, seeing him as a threat to their traditions. But Shem persevered, convinced that his mission was not only to populate the land, but also to sow devotion to the one true God. Ham, on the other hand, set out for the south, carrying the weight of the curse and the resentment toward his family. He ventured into warm and lush lands, where dense jungles and endless rivers seemed to hide ancient secrets. There, among the shadows of a vibrant and mysterious world, Ham discovered remnants of civilizations that seemed to have existed long before the flood. Colossal stone structures, inscriptions in unknown languages, and forgotten relics fascinated him. These discoveries ignited a deep desire within him to build a legacy of his own, free from the shadow of his father and the judgment of his brothers. But that independence came at a cost. Despite his achievements, Noah's curse never ceased to pursue him. Every victory, every city he built, carried the echo of a rejection he could never fully erase. Japheth, meanwhile, traveled north. Along his path he encountered tribes of strong and resilient men, accustomed to the harshness of the climate and scarcity. At first they regarded him with suspicion, but Japheth earned their trust by sharing the knowledge of farming and hunting that he had learned from his father. Over time, he became a mediator among tribes, uniting communities that had once fought against each other. But his greatest challenge was not survival. It was the clash of cultures. The beliefs of these tribes were deeply rooted in myths and legends that contrasted with his understanding of God. Yet Japheth did not judge them. He learned from them, convinced that humanity's diversity was not an obstacle, but part of the divine design. And there was something else. Japheth felt within him a call toward the unknown, toward the lands beyond the horizon. Though his mission was to populate the north, his spirit longed for what lay beyond the ocean, in lands no one had yet explored. Over time, the paths of Noah's sons completely diverged. Shem forged a lineage marked by devotion and closeness to God. Ham built great cities and kingdoms, yet he could never escape the weight of his family's distrust. And Japheth, a sower of knowledge and unity, became a bridge between cultures, a traveler in search of the vastness of the world. Thus, the destiny of Noah's sons was fulfilled. Humanity grew, generations multiplied, and the echo of that final blessing, spoken in the valley, continued to resonate through the centuries. Although each brother followed his own path, the tensions and resentments sown in those early days did not completely fade. Like an underground river flowing unseen, the echoes of the past still reverberated in their hearts, intertwining their destinies despite the distance. And though the rainbow continued to shine in the sky after each rain, reminding them of God's covenant, each brother beheld it from a different perspective, colored by his own experiences and aspirations. Noah's sons began to populate the earth, but the divisions taking root in their hearts would soon shape a world as vast as it was complex, where each one's legacy would influence the course of humanity. Shem's journey to the lands of the east was not just a physical passage but a spiritual quest. From the moment he left the valley, where he had grown up with his father and brothers, he felt an immense responsibility upon his shoulders, one that set him apart from the others. He was not just Noah's firstborn, he was the bearer of a promise, the guardian of a sacred heritage that, deep in his soul, he understood as essential to the survival of the human spirit. As he traveled through the vast eastern landscapes, Shem spent long hours in prayer and meditation. One night, as he rested under a starry sky, he felt an enveloping presence, a whisper in the wind that seemed to vibrate with a force beyond the earthly realm. Opening his eyes, he beheld a radiant figure, a living light emanating serenity and majesty. An angel of the Lord stood before him. "Shem, son of Noah," the angel proclaimed in a deep voice, "through you and your lineage, the eternal covenant will be fulfilled. You will be the father of a holy nation, one that will bring blessing to all the families of the earth. But your path will be filled with trials, and temptations will lurk at every turn. Will you remain faithful to this mission?" With his heart pounding and full of reverence, Shem bowed his head and replied, "I will do as the Most High commands. Though my strength is small and my wisdom limited, guide me, and I will obey." The angel raised his hand and pointed to the horizon. "Build an altar here, and this will be the first testimony of the promise. From this place, your descendants will multiply, and through them the name of the Most High will be made known." Following the divine instruction, Shem built an altar of smooth stones and offered a sacrifice, thus sealing his commitment. From that moment, his journey transcended the personal. It became the beginning of a legacy that would endure through the ages. As he continued, Shem established settlements in the fertile lands he encountered. In every place he founded, he built an altar, and in every generation that arose, he passed down the most precious teaching, devotion to the one true God. This knowledge was carefully preserved, transmitted from fathers to sons through oral traditions and simple yet profound rituals. The children of Shem grew up with a clear awareness of their purpose. They were farmers and shepherds, but above all, guardians of a truth that set them apart from neighboring tribes. Their faith in the Most High was not just part of their lives, it was the very essence of their identity. Over time, this devotion earned them the respect of some tribes, but also the hostility of others. Shem dreamed of the future of his lineage, but he also bore the heavy responsibility of keeping the faith alive among his people, especially in times of adversity. On his journeys, Shem encountered tribes that worshiped gods carved from wood, stone, and metal. These deities, representations of natural forces or sacred animals, were at the heart of these communities' way of life. Each time he interacted with these tribes, Shem experienced an inner conflict. He knew he had to remain steadfast in his faith, but he also understood that imposing his beliefs might drive away those who most needed to hear the truth. On one occasion, Shem arrived at a village where the people worshiped the god of thunder, an imposing figure carved into the side of a mountain. The village leader, intrigued by Shem's wisdom and serenity, invited him to witness a ceremony in honor of their god. Shem, after offering a brief prayer for guidance, accepted the invitation not as a participant, but as a witness. During the ceremony, Shem realized something profound. These people did not seek to offend the Creator. They simply knew no other way to explain the forces that governed their lives. At the end of the ritual, the tribe's leader approached Shem and asked about his faith. Instead of condemning the tribe's idolatry, Shem spoke of the Creator as the one true God, the one who had placed the stars in the sky and the rivers upon the earth. His approach was not one of judgment, but of invitation. Some listened with curiosity, others with skepticism, But one family chose to abandon the worship of the idol and follow Shem's teachings. It was a small triumph, but to him, it was a sign that his mission was not in vain. That night as he slept, he had a dream that marked him deeply. In his vision, he saw a gigantic tree rising toward the heavens, its roots spreading across the entire earth. In its branches hung luminous fruits that drew people from all nations. However, he also saw serpents attempting to climb the tree, seeking to devour the fruit. Then a voice resounded, "This is your lineage, Shem. It will be a blessing to the world, but it will also be attacked. Persevere, and the fruit of this tree will bring light to the darkness." Upon waking, Shem understood that his legacy would not be easy to uphold. Opposition and temptations would be constant, but the covenant with God was greater than any challenge. Thus, he redoubled his efforts, instructing his descendants to keep the faith alive and never stray, no matter the difficulties they faced. As the years passed, Shem's lineage became a symbol of hope. As his people grew, their faith remained the guiding thread that united them, even when external circumstances sought to tear them apart. Though Shem never met Abraham, the patriarch who would arise from his lineage, his teachings and devotion laid the foundation for that day to come. His journey was not easy, but his life proved that even in a divided world, faithfulness to a divine purpose could leave an eternal impact. His name was inscribed in the memory of nations as the ancestor of a sacred people, one that would carry the light of the Most High to all the families of the earth. The South, with its scorching heat and lush landscapes, offered a striking contrast to the lands Ham had left behind. Here, nature was vibrant, with dense jungles hiding secrets among their trees and vast plains stretching endlessly. For Ham, these lands represented an opportunity to start anew, far from the curses and tensions that had haunted him since the incident in Noah's tent. He quickly built settlements that thrived due to his ingenuity and leadership. However, a persistent restlessness drove him to explore further, as if something in these lands was calling to him. It was during one of these explorations that he made a discovery that would change his life and his lineage forever. Near a winding river flowing between tree-covered hills, Ham and a group of his followers found an opening in the ground that appeared natural, but as they approached, they noticed that the edges of the entrance were carved with geometric patterns and unknown symbols. Intrigued, Ham decided to explore the place. They descended through a narrow tunnel, lighting their way with torches. What they found was astonishing. An underground city with carved columns depicting humanoid figures and celestial phenomena. In the center of the main chamber, resting on a stone pedestal, lay an object placed with great care. It was a dark tablet, made of a material Ham could not identify. It was covered in inscriptions that did not correspond to any known language, yet something about it awakened in him a mixture of awe and fear. When he touched the tablet, a shiver ran through his body. It was as if the object was alive, as if it contained ancient knowledge that had been waiting to be discovered. From that moment on, the tablet became an obsession for Ham. Though he could not fully decipher it, he was convinced that it held ancestral secrets capable of granting power and wisdom beyond imagination. However, the tablet brought not only fascination, but also doubt. As Ham studied the engravings and depictions of the ancients, he began to question, was it possible that his father's teachings were not the whole truth? If this city and its knowledge had existed before the flood, what did that mean for the faith in a single creator God? Could it be that there were forces Noah had never mentioned or perhaps had never known? Ham kept his discoveries a secret, fearing how they would be interpreted by his brothers or even his own descendants. An internal battle raged within him, between loyalty to his father's teachings and the allure of the tablet's mysteries. As the days passed, he drifted further from the spiritual practices Noah had instilled in him, replacing them with an almost religious fervor toward the knowledge he believed he could obtain from the tablet. Inspired by his leadership and his discovery, Ham's descendants began building kingdoms that rivaled any in grandeur. Their cities were adorned with massive temples and statues, representing the figures Ham had seen in the engravings of the underground city. These kingdoms were rich in resources and culture, yet they strayed from the divine principles Noah had taught. In his pursuit of power, Ham introduced practices that directly challenged his father's teachings. The rituals and ceremonies in his people's temples were steeped in symbolism drawn from the tablet's inscriptions. The worship of the Creator was replaced by reverence for the ancient inhabitants of the underground city, whom Ham began to regard as the true precursors of humanity. However, the power Ham's kingdoms attained also brought conflict. Ambition and the desire for control led to internal wars among the clans of his lineage. These struggles not only fragmented his descendants, but also reinforced the resentment that had taken root in Ham's heart since the day Noah pronounced his curse. Though his cities were vast and his influence widespread, Ham could never escape the shadow of Noah's words. No matter how impressive his achievements were, they always seemed tainted by strife, division, and an unshakable sense of incompleteness. Even when surrounded by riches and loyal followers, Ham felt an emptiness he could not fill, as if something essential was missing. One night, while examining the tablet in the solitude of his chamber, Ham had a disturbing dream. In it, he saw a colossal tower reaching the clouds, built by his lineage in an attempt to challenge the heavens. However, before the tower could be completed, it was struck down by a celestial force, and the people who had built it were scattered, unable to understand one another. Ham awoke in a cold sweat, feeling that the dream was a forewarning of what would come if he continued down the path he had chosen. Despite the conflicts and doubts that marked his life, Ham left a lasting impact on the world. His lineage became builders of kingdoms, bearers of knowledge, and architects of great civilizations. But they also bore the consequences of straying from his father's principles, a legacy of division and tension passed down from generation to generation. The tablet, though never fully deciphered, remained a symbol of Ham's duality, his pursuit of knowledge and power, but also his internal struggle with faith and identity. The echoes of his story would resonate through time, serving as a reminder that even the greatest achievements can be accompanied by the shadows of the choices that made them possible. The cold northern wind brushed against Japheth's face as he gazed at the towering mountains on the horizon. Since leaving the valley where he had grown up, his heart had been filled with an insatiable curiosity, a longing to see what lay beyond the known lands. Japheth did not seek wealth or power. His desire was to understand the vastness of the world, to uncover its secrets, and to learn from the peoples who inhabited it. The journey north was long and arduous. The lands were rugged, with snow-covered hills and frozen rivers that challenged even the strongest travelers. But Japheth, with his resilient spirit, saw each challenge as an opportunity to grow. As he pressed forward, Japheth and his small group of followers learned to survive in these harsh lands. With patience and skill, they built shelters from wood and hides, hunted animals for sustenance, and made use of the resources nature provided. Every day was a lesson in adaptation and perseverance. Along the way, Japheth encountered isolated tribes that seemed frozen in time, living in deep harmony with their surroundings. Their customs were enigmatic, their languages incomprehensible. Yet Japheth, with his observant nature and patient heart, discovered that by taking the time to understand, he could find ways to communicate with them. His peaceful demeanor and genuine desire to learn earned him the trust of these tribes. With generosity, they shared their knowledge of hunting, the changing seasons, and the myths that explain the origins of the world according to their ancestors. Each story, each teaching, revealed to him a deeper connection among all people. One day, after braving a treacherous mountain pass, Japheth arrived at a vast and fertile valley. The sight was majestic, but what truly astonished him was the people who lived there. Their clothing and customs were different, yes, but when they began to speak, Japheth felt something strange. Their words, though unfamiliar, carried sounds and structures that were strikingly familiar. Intrigued, he decided to stay, to live among them, to learn their language and compare it with the one he had inherited from his father. Over time, he realized the truth. Though distinct, their languages shared a common origin. They were branches of the same tree, scattered yet connected. This revelation filled him with awe and led him to a profound reflection on humanity's history. What if these people were our distant relatives? He wondered one night, gazing at the starry sky. Is it possible that, despite time and distance, we are still bound by an invisible thread? The leader of the tribe, a wise elder named Aram, confirmed his suspicions. Our ancestors spoke of a great flood and of a man who, by God's will, saved his family in an ark. Though time has eroded the details, we know we descend from that lineage. Perhaps you are living proof that his bloodline endures. Those words became a turning point in Japheth's life. He understood that humanity was not merely a collection of nations separated by insurmountable barriers, but a mosaic of cultures that, in their diversity, shared a common origin. With renewed hope, Japheth took on a mission to teach the tribes he encountered the value of shared knowledge and mutual respect. He spoke to them about the importance of cooperation, of alliances built on trust rather than conquest. He showed them that humanity's true strength lay in its ability to unite, despite differences. As the years passed, Japheth's descendants inherited his spirit of exploration. They became navigators who sailed the seas, traders who connected distant lands, and mediators who resolved disputes between tribes. Their ability to adapt and learn from other cultures made them invaluable in a world still striving to rebuild after the Great Flood. The northern lands, once harsh and unwelcoming, transformed into the home of a vibrant and diverse civilization. Each new people that joined this great community brought its own legacy songs, tools, hunting techniques, and stories that enriched the collective memory of humankind. Although Japheth never returned to the place where he had grown up, his heart always carried the memory of his father and brothers. He often looked south, wondering if their paths would ever cross again. But he understood that his true mission was not to go back, but to move forward, carrying with him the vision of a world where diversity was not a cause for division, but a source of richness and strength. In his later years, Japheth wrote a reflection on a parchment, one that would endure for generations. We are like the colors of the rainbow my father beheld after the flood, different, yet part of the same covenant. Though language and customs set us apart, we remain children of a common origin. Our task is not to erase these differences, but to learn to live in harmony with them. Japheth's legacy stretched across the seas and mountains, inspiring generations of his lineage to explore, learn, and build bridges between cultures. His name was remembered as the father of many peoples, but his true impact lay in the idea that even in a divided world, unity and purpose could still be found amid diversity. The sky was bathed in a deep red as the sun slowly descended toward the horizon, a sunset that seemed to mark the end of an era and the birth of something new, though uncertain. After years of separation, Noah's sons gathered in the valley where they had begun their lives after the flood. The land, once marked by desolation and death, now overflowed with life-green hills, rushing rivers, and fields in full bloom. Yet the beauty of the landscape could not dispel the tensions brewing among the brothers. Shem arrived first, accompanied by his children and grandchildren. His expression was calm, yet imbued with authority. Every movement he made reflected his devotion, and in his hands he carried a staff carved with symbols representing the covenant with God. Shortly after, Japheth arrived, followed by a diverse group of people who reflected the variety of the northern lands. His face showed the weariness of the journey, but also the hope that this reunion could bring something meaningful. Finally, Ham appeared, dressed in richly decorated robes, bearing the symbols of the great kingdoms he had built in the south. His gaze was defiant, as if ready to face any judgment. At first, the brothers greeted each other with respect, though with a certain stiffness. Time and distance had deepened the differences between them. Shem, in a solemn tone, was the first to speak. "It is an honor to see you again, brothers. The Lord has been merciful in allowing us this meeting. I hope we can remember our common purpose and honor the covenant God made with our father." Ham raised an eyebrow and crossed his arms. "Common purpose? Have you forgotten that we separated precisely because our visions were different? You speak of obedience, Shem, but I have found something more valuable: freedom. The lands of the south have taught me that there is no single path, that knowledge and autonomy are the true keys to progress." Japheth interjected calmly, his voice contrasting with the tension in the air. "You are both right, and you are both wrong. The world is not black and white. I have learned that balance is what allows different cultures and ways of thinking to coexist. We are here because, despite our differences, we are still family, and that should mean something." The dialogue soon turned into a debate. Shem insisted on the importance of faith and devotion to the Creator as the foundation of any nation. Ham argued that true progress came from challenging established beliefs and seeking one's own answers. Japheth, caught between both views, tried to find common ground, but to no avail. In the midst of the discussion, a group of travelers arrived at the camp, bringing news that captured everyone's attention. According to them, in a region not far away, the inhabitants of several tribes had united to build a colossal structure, a tower that aimed to reach the heavens. The project, known as Babel, stood as a symbol of unity, but also of defiance toward the Almighty. They say the tower is so tall that its shadow stretches for miles. One of the travelers recounted, his voice filled with both awe and fear. The leaders claim that with it, they will prove that men do not need to rely on the heavens, that they can become gods themselves. The news weighed heavily on the brothers. Shem, horrified, was the first to speak. "This is blasphemy. How dare men challenge the Creator in such a way? This tower is not a symbol of unity, but of arrogance. We must stop them before they provoke God's wrath." Ham, on the other hand, saw the situation differently. "Why do you always assume that what you don't understand is a threat, Shem? Perhaps this tower is not an act of defiance, but an achievement. Humanity has come together and created something extraordinary. Maybe it is the beginning of a new chapter in our history." Japheth remained silent for a moment, reflecting on what he had heard. Finally, he spoke with a firm voice. "The tower can be a symbol of unity or of defiance, but what truly matters is the spirit in which it was built. If it is driven by pride and arrogance, it will be its own downfall. But if it is a genuine attempt to connect people, it could be something good. We must find out before we act." The debate over the tower heightened the tensions between the brothers. Shem, unwavering in his conviction, believed that allowing the tower to continue was a danger to all humanity. Ham, on the other hand, argued that it was mankind's right to seek its own path, even if that meant challenging the divine. Japheth, caught between them, tried to maintain peace, but he could not help but feel that the discord between his brothers was a reflection of the greater divisions taking shape in the world. As the discussions continued, the rumors about Babel kept growing. It was said that thousands of men worked day and night, that languages were blending, and that ambition seemed to have no limits. The tower was not just a construction, it was a symbol of what humanity could achieve when it set aside its differences, but also a reminder of what could happen when pride overshadowed humility. When night fell over the camp, the brothers retreated to their tents, each lost in his own thoughts. Shem prayed, seeking guidance to act according to God's will. Ham, meanwhile, considered the possibility of traveling to Babel, intrigued by the idea of witnessing the great work that everyone was speaking about. Japheth, as always, sought balance, wondering if there was a way to reconcile his brothers' differences and prevent a greater conflict. The reunion, which should have been a moment of unity, had instead exposed the fractures that had formed over time. Though the brothers shared a common origin, their paths had led them in such different directions that finding common ground seemed impossible. And as the campfire burned slowly under the stars, the shadow of the Tower of Babel began to spread not only over the nearby lands, but also over the hearts of Noah's sons. The sun shone intensely over the vast plain, where the Tower of Babel stood, a structure that seemed to challenge not only the heavens, but also the order established by the Creator. The echoes of hammers and chisels rang out constantly, mingled with the voices of thousands of men and women who worked tirelessly. The tower, built with baked bricks and mortar, rose higher than anything humanity had ever conceived before. Its foundation was broad and solid, designed to support the weight of the collective ambition of those who had envisioned it. At the heart of this monumental project stood Ham and his lineage, who had taken leadership of the construction. To Ham, the tower represented more than just an architectural feat. It was a declaration of freedom, a testament that humanity did not need to submit to the restrictions imposed by the heavens. In his mind, Babel was the ultimate symbol of mankind's ability to take control of its own destiny. News of the tower had reached Shem and Japheth with enough clarity to alarm them deeply. Though their ideological differences remained, they both agreed that the Babel project was an act of arrogance that endangered the balance they sought to preserve within their own lineages. United by this concern, they set out on a journey to Babel, hoping to persuade Ham to abandon his endeavor before it was too late. When they arrived at the plain, they were left in awe of what they saw. The Tower of Babel rose majestically, a colossal work that seemed to defy the heavens themselves. But it was not only its imposing height that caught their attention, it was also the relentless activity surrounding it. Thousands of people worked without rest, speaking in various dialects, yet understanding one another, guided by a common purpose. To Shem, this was an affront to the Almighty. To Japheth, it was a delicate balance between progress and peril. Ham greeted them with a confident smile, but there was a defiant gleam in his eyes. "What brings you to Babel, brothers? Have you come to enlighten us with your wisdom, or to condemn what you do not understand?" Shem was the first to respond, his voice firm and full of conviction. "Ham, this tower is not a tribute to human greatness, but a monument to arrogance. It is an act of rebellion against the Almighty. Have you forgotten the lesson of the flood? When pride blinds the heart, the fall is inevitable." Ham let out a brief laugh, tinged with skepticism. "Shem, always fearful of divine punishment, this tower is not an affront, it is a proclamation of freedom. It is proof that men can forge their own destiny without depending on the decrees of the heavens. While you look to the past, I embrace the future." Japheth, always seeking harmony, intervened with a calm tone. "Ham, what you have accomplished here is impressive, but Shem is not entirely wrong. Unity is a fragile gift, and pride can turn it into ruin. Are you certain that this work is for the good of all and not just a challenge to the heavens?" Ham's expression hardened. His gaze grew impatient. You do not understand. You cling to an old order that no longer serves us. This tower does not need God's approval because it belongs to humanity. And if you cannot accept that, then leave. Shem and Japheth exchanged a sorrowful look. They realized that Ham would not turn back. Before leaving, Shem warned him in a grave voice. Ham, remember these words when the day comes that the Almighty intervenes. It will not be for lack of warning. Time passed, and the tower continued to rise, defying the heights and the limits of humanity. But high above the sky, divine patience had reached its end. One night, as the stars shone with an unusual brilliance, the fate of Babel was sealed. At dawn, a strange confusion took hold of the place. The workers, who until then had understood each other perfectly, suddenly looked at one another in bewilderment. What had been a common language had now turned into a chaotic mix of incomprehensible sounds. Cries rose among the crowd. "Bring more bricks." But those who heard only frowned, unable to understand. Instead of obeying, they argued among themselves, each speaking in a tongue the others could not comprehend. Work came to a halt. What had once been a center of cooperation turned into a scene of frustration and despair. Seeing what was happening, Ham felt both anger and fear. "Keep working. Do not stop because of this." But his own words sounded like unintelligible babble to his laborers. Not even those he trusted most could understand him anymore. The project crumbled not because of a catastrophic disaster, but because of the impossibility of communication. Confusion spread like a plague. Entire families, unable to understand each other, separated. The groups that had built together divided, seeking new lands where they could find others who spoke as they did. And so, the tower that was meant to unite humanity became the very cause of its division. Babel, born from pride, fell into oblivion, becoming an eternal reminder that unity without humility is doomed to fail. As the tribes began to scatter across the earth, each carried with them a fragment of what Babel once was. What had started as a dream of unity ended in separation, and the unfinished tower stood as a silent testimony to the fragility of human pride. Ham remained in the plain for a time, gazing at the ruins of his ambition. He could still see the imposing silhouette of the tower, now abandoned, its walls worn down by wind and time. As he pondered what had happened, he remembered his brother's words. Perhaps in his desire for greatness, he had underestimated the consequences of his actions. Finally, he left Babel behind and returned to his lands in the south. There his lineage prospered, and his name became synonymous with ingenuity and progress. But within him, something had changed. Though he never admitted it, deep inside he understood that the confusion of languages was not an accident, but divine judgment. It became a reminder that ambition without humility always leads to downfall. Meanwhile, from their own lands, Shem and Japheth watched with sorrow as humanity scattered. The Tower of Babel had fallen, but its story would endure for generations as a warning. Men may populate the earth and build great cities, but they must never forget the Creator who gave them breath and purpose. The days that followed were marked by silence and reflection. Each of Noah's sons returned to his home, carrying not only the memories of Babel but also the consequences of their own choices. The world, once a place of shared promises, was now fragmented into nations with different languages and cultures. Babel had not only changed the course of human history, but had also left an indelible mark on Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Their paths would never be the same. In the east, Shem continued his mission to preserve devotion to the Almighty. The experience of Babel strengthened his belief that only obedience to God could prevent humanity from falling once again into arrogance and chaos. He gathered his descendants and spoke to them with solemnity. "We are the guardians of the promise. Through our lineage, The truth of the Almighty will be known. We have not been called to conquer with the sword, but to guide with wisdom, not to dominate, but to teach. Under his leadership, settlements were established where life revolved around worship and the knowledge of God. Children learned divine laws from an early age, and prayer was at the heart of each day. Over time, prophets and sages would rise from among his descendants, shaping history with their words. Though Shem would not live to see it, from his lineage would come Abraham, the man with whom God would make an eternal covenant. But Shem was not exempt from challenges. Around him, tribes that had strayed from the Almighty adopted false gods and corrupt practices. He was despised by many, but he never wavered in his faith. He held on to the promise given to him. One day, his descendants would bring blessings to all nations. In the south, Ham became a powerful leader. His cities grew and prospered, filled with knowledge, art, and architecture. But even as his people celebrated their achievements, he felt an emptiness. Babel still weighed on his mind, like a shadow that never faded. "We had a chance," he whispered one night, gazing at the stars from the terrace of his palace. "A chance to prove that men can be great without depending on heaven. And we failed." He sought to fill that void with more power and grandeur, expanding his kingdom and strengthening his lineage. But deep down, he knew that the true unity he had longed for in Babel could never be achieved without God's blessing. His descendants inherited his ambition and built empires that dazzled the world, yet always under the shadow of division and discord. For his part, Japheth returned to the lands of the north with a divided heart. Babel had shown him the immense potential of humanity, but also its dangers. While his brothers focused on devotion or power, he saw the world as a vast mosaic of cultures, each with something valuable to offer. Perhaps the dispersion was not just a punishment, he reflected. Perhaps it is an opportunity for each nation to walk its own path and, in time, find the true purpose that God has set for them. Japheth and his descendants became sailors, traders, and explorers. They traveled through unknown lands and forged connections between distant peoples. Though they did not always understand the divine purpose, their lineage carried a spirit of discovery and curiosity, which centuries later would contribute to the spread of knowledge across the world. Thus ended the era of Babel. The tower remained as a monument to the fragility of human pride and the power of the Almighty. Men scattered, nations were formed, and history took its course. But in every language and every people, the memory of that day never faded. It was an eternal reminder that greatness without humility leads to ruin, and that no matter how high man tries to rise, his true purpose will always be in God's hands. Perhaps the dispersion is not merely a curse, Japheth pondered, as his steps led him through the towering mountains surrounding his home. Perhaps it is an opportunity for each people to forge their identity, and, together, achieve something greater than the sum of our parts. Under his leadership, Japheth's descendants embarked on journeys to new lands, crossing seas and mountains in their pursuit of knowledge. They became navigators, merchants, and explorers, weaving networks between distant civilizations, carrying with them ideas, stories, and teachings. The northern lands transformed into a melting pot of cultures, where differences were not barriers but bridges to mutual understanding. Japheth watched with pride as his descendants built connections between nations, but he knew that true unity remained a distant ideal. The confusion of Babel had fragmented humanity, yet within him there was a hope that one day differences could be reconciled without sacrificing the essence of each people. Years passed, and the sons of Noah grew old, surrounded by their descendants and the fruits of their labor. Their paths had led them in different directions, but as their lives drew to a close, in moments of reflection, they all questioned the reach of their decisions. Shem, looking toward the future, saw in his descendants the promise of a faith-guided destiny. Yet he understood that temptation and pride would always be shadows along the path. Ham, though proud of his achievements, felt the weight of an unshakable unease, a reminder that worldly power could never fill the void of the spirit. Japheth, for his part, found comfort in the diversity he had fostered, though he knew that true harmony would require an even greater effort. The Tower of Babel remained in the memory of all a symbol of warning and of hope, a lesson on the limits of human ambition, but also a reminder that, despite their differences, all men share a common origin. And as Noah's sons gazed at the horizon, each in their own way, they knew their legacy was not yet complete. They had shaped the world, but the fate of humanity would continue to be written by future generations, those eager to redeem the mistakes of the past and build a future worthy of the divine covenant. The valley where Noah had chosen to spend his final days emanated serenity, as if time itself had come to a standstill. The mountains stood like solemn guardians, and the rivers flowed with the calm of eternity. Yet in his heart Noah felt urgency. He knew his time was short. Seated beneath a tree with lush foliage, his staff resting beside him, he called his sons for the last time. Shem, Ham, and Japheth came from their lands, accompanied by their descendants. The years had left their mark on their faces, etched with wisdom and weariness. But the disputes of the past seemed to have lost their edge. They were not rivals, but sons answering their father's call. Noah welcomed them with a gaze filled with both love and concern. His voice, though weakened by age, still carried the authority of one who had walked with God. "My sons," he began, "the Creator has revealed to me things that you and your generations must know. The world you are rebuilding is vast and diverse, but also fragile. Each of your lineages will play a crucial role in fulfilling the divine plan. But remember, with great purpose comes great responsibility." Shem bowed his head in reverence, attentive to every word. Ham crossed his arms, expectant but cautious, while Japheth listened with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Noah closed his eyes for a moment, seeking strength to continue. When he opened them, his gaze seemed to drift beyond what was visible. "The Lord has shown me 3 paths, 3 destinies intertwined through time. Each of you, and the children of your children, will play a role in their fulfillment." He turned to Shem, speaking with solemnity. "Shem, through you, the light of the Creator will be revealed. From your lineage will come prophets and kings, men who will walk with God and guide the nations to His truth. But you will bear a great burden, for faithfulness to the divine will is not easy. Your descendants will be tested, but their perseverance will bring redemption to the world." Then he fixed his gaze on Ham. His tone became both admonishing and compassionate. "Ham, your descendants will be great builders, masters of earth and stone. Mighty kingdoms will arise from your hands, but they will also be perilous. The knowledge you have sought will be both a blessing and a curse, for it can be used to build or to destroy. Yet even in the darkness, the Lord will not forget your lineage, and from among your descendants, wisdom will one day emerge to restore what has been lost." "Japheth," Noah said with a mix of hope and warning, "your children will inhabit the farthest lands. They will be explorers, navigators, and unifiers of cultures. They will bring diversity to the world, but they must also learn to balance the pursuit of knowledge with faithfulness to the Creator. In the melting pot of nations they will establish, there will be both conflict and opportunity. But if your descendants find balance, they will become a bridge between peoples." Noah's sons listened in silence, absorbing their father's words. Though each of them envisioned the future differently, Noah's voice left an indelible mark on their hearts. They understood that their actions would not only affect their own generation, but all those to come. Shem was the first to speak. "Father, I promise that my lineage will remain faithful to the covenant. I will teach my children to walk in obedience to the Almighty, and through us, the truth will be known." Ham, though more reserved, nodded solemnly. "I have made mistakes, but my children have the potential to build something that endures. I will teach them to use knowledge with wisdom, and to remember that even power must serve a purpose." Japheth, with a firm and steady voice, added, "The diversity I have seen in the world is a reflection of the greatness of the Creator. My lineage will seek to unite rather than divide, to respect rather than impose. That will be our legacy." Noah listened to their words and, with a faint smile, replied, "Remember this, God's covenant is not only with you, but with all of humanity. Despite challenges and trials, He will not abandon you. Walk in faith, and the future will be greater than you can imagine." In the days that followed, Noah remained silent, gazing at the horizon and reflecting on his life. He had witnessed the devastation of the flood and the promise of the rainbow. He had led his family through divine judgment and watched them scatter to fill the earth. Now, in his final moments, he found peace, trusting that God's purpose would be fulfilled through his sons. One night, under a sky full of stars, Noah closed his eyes for the last time. His passing was peaceful, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, who honored him with words of gratitude and respect. Noah's body was laid to rest in the valley, beneath the same tree where he had spoken his last prophecy. Over his grave, his sons placed a stone with a simple yet powerful inscription. "Here rests Noah, the man who walked with God and preserved life for future generations." After his death, the brothers parted ways once more, each returning to their lands with a renewed sense of purpose. Though their paths led them in different directions, they shared a common commitment to preserve their father's legacy and ensure that their lineages fulfilled the roles assigned to them. The world they helped rebuild was vast and challenging, but it was also full of promise. Through Shem, Ham, and Japheth, humanity continued its journey, carrying with it the lessons of the past and the hopes for the future, as it kept writing the story of the eternal covenant with the Creator. As the centuries passed, the world began to transform. The lands inhabited by Noah's sons became home to civilizations that reflected the legacies of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Though their lineages followed different paths, time wove connections between them, revealing that despite the distances, their destinies remained intertwined. The descendants of Shem, guided by their devotion to the Creator, became spiritual leaders and guardians of faith. In their lands, altars and communities dedicated to the teaching of divine principles arose. The word of the Almighty was passed down from generation to generation, laying the foundation of a spiritual tradition that, in time, would give rise to prophets like Abraham, Moses, and other men of faith, who would change the course of history. Shem was remembered not only as the patriarch of a sacred lineage, but as a beacon of unwavering faithfulness. His descendants recounted how his wisdom and devotion made him a bridge between man and God. Even among those who did not share his faith, Shem was regarded with respect, for his vision transcended generations and borders. Throughout the centuries, his lineage remained steadfast in the divine covenant, facing challenges without abandoning its purpose. Through them, humanity received not only sacred teachings, but also the promise of future redemption. Meanwhile, the descendants of Ham thrived in the lands of the south. With an innovative spirit and extraordinary skill in construction, they built advanced civilizations. Their cities, adorned with majestic temples, palaces, and irrigation systems, stood as a testament to mankind's mastery over its environment. Although Noah's curse had weighed upon Ham, his lineage proved that even adversity could become a driving force for greatness. They distinguished themselves not only as builders, but also as merchants and rulers who wove vast networks of trade. Despite the struggles and ambitions that marked their path, their contributions to human development were undeniable. Over time, the figure of Ham became a symbol of resilience and creativity. For some, he was a reminder of the consequences of pride. For others, an inspiration to overcome challenges and achieve excellence. Japheth's descendants, for their part, ventured into distant lands, exploring beyond the known world. They became sailors and traders who navigated seas and crossed mountains, connecting peoples and fostering cultural exchange. In the lands of the north, their communities flourished as centers of diversity. Languages, customs, and beliefs converged, reflecting Japheth's vision, a world where differences could coexist in harmony. Though they were not free from conflicts, they made great strides in knowledge, diplomacy, and unity among nations. Japheth's legacy went beyond mere territorial expansion. His lineage embodied the ability to unite peoples. They carried with them the promise of unity and diversity, showing that humanity could find common ground beyond its differences. As time passed, the lineages of Shem, Ham, and Japheth began to intertwine more frequently. Ham's merchants brought their goods to Japheth's lands, while Shem's spiritual teachers shared their wisdom with those seeking truth. Although cultural and linguistic differences remained a constant challenge, the exchange of ideas and resources helped strengthen the bonds between them. At a crucial moment in history, a symbolic encounter took place between the leaders of the three lineages. It was a moment of reflection and reconciliation, where each acknowledged the value of the other in shaping the world. Though not all tensions were erased, that moment marked the beginning of a collaboration that would endure for generations. The rainbow that Noah had beheld after the flood remained a symbol of hope. Despite the divisions of language and culture, the story of humanity continued to be woven with threads of a common origin. Even with their differences, the lineages of Shem, Ham, and Japheth shared a common purpose: to honor the divine covenant and build a world where justice and compassion prevailed. Shem preserved faith, Ham drove innovation, and Japheth fostered cooperation among nations. Together, despite the challenges, they became the pillars of humanity, proving that unity could be found even in fragmentation. Thus, the story of Noah's sons continued to unfold across the centuries as a testament to the struggle between pride and humility, conflict and reconciliation. The shadows of Babel and the divisions of the past reminded humanity of its failures, yet they also hinted at the hope of a future where differences would not be barriers but sources of strength. The Creator's eternal covenant with humanity remained like a rainbow stretching across time, illuminating the path toward a divine purpose yet to be fulfilled. And in that purpose, the lineages of Shem, Ham, and Japheth would continue to play a central role in a story that was only just beginning. I hope you have found inspiration in this profound story about Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. A narrative that invites us to reflect on the origins of humanity, the challenges we face, and the hope for unity that guides us through the ages. If this story has touched your heart, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel to continue exploring the legacy of the Scriptures together. Leave us a comment with your thoughts and reflections, as every perspective enriches our understanding of these timeless accounts. Share this video with your loved ones, so they too may contemplate the depth of this story and its significance in our lives. Let's continue walking the path of knowledge and faith together. See you in the next video.